We're going to learn Best Friend by Foster the People. Now, if you listen to the song, it's got some really great guitar playing on some parts and then not a lot of guitar playing at all on others. So I thought I'd show you the main parts that you're going to play, but also give you a simplified way of perhaps playing the whole thing together, showing you some things you might do in the gaps where the guitar isn't really too busy. Now, all I'm playing with this is my electric guitar, and I've got a delay pedal set up, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I'm going to go through all the parts first, and then at the end of the video I'm going to show you a start to finish run through. So let's get into it. First up is the chorus. Now, this might well be the hardest section of the song for you if you're not used to playing funk guitar, but I'm going to show you some of the features you're going to need to work on anyway if you want to make it sound like the record. Now, we've got 4 chords in this: an F minor, G flat major, A flat major, and a B flat minor, although we're just going to play it as a power chord. Now, don't worry if you don't know what any of that means. They're odd looking chords if you're used to playing mostly open chords, but they're all very good for funk style. Now, this is what it's going to sound like. So there's quite a lot going on there. We're going to separate it into the main rhythm of the chords and then what I'm doing to make it sound funky. Let's look at playing the first chord, the F minor. So you want your 3rd and 4th finger squeezed tight together, and they're both going to play the 10th fret on the middle 2 strings. So I'm using my 3rd finger for the D string, my 4th finger for the G string. Then I'm going to use my 2nd finger, fret 9 on the B string, and my 1st finger, fret 8 on the high E string. But I'm not going to play with the fingertip of that. I'm going to play with my finger flattened across and barring across the net. And I'm going to come back to why in a second, but this is what it sounds like. Nothing on the top 2 strings. Now, the main rhythm of this is going to be 3 strums, and they're going to go down, up, up. Then we're going to keep the shape down. You're going to slide it back 2 frets, and what you do is you flatten that bar down tight, and you're going to take your little finger off. So now we've got our 3rd finger should be at fret 8 on the D string. We should have our bar holding down at fret 6 on the G. You should have your 2nd finger holding down fret 7 on the B, and you should have the bar again holding down the 6th fret on the high E. So again, and we're going to do 2 strums of this both down. So we've gone, and again, down, up, up, down, down. Then, keeping that shape down, you're just going to move the exact same shape back up 2 frets. So it's very similar to the chord we started on, except we've got that bar and our little finger's not doing anything. Now we are going to play it with the same rhythm we did on the first chord, so that's down, up, up. So far we've gone. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drop our 3rd finger down a string. You can take your 2nd finger off if you like, and you're going to add your 4th finger to fret 11. So you should be holding down 1st finger at fret 8, 3rd finger at fret 10 on the G, and fourth finger fret 11 on the B, and we're going to do 2 downs. So far we've gone. Okay, and again. Great. Let's talk about the funk strumming then. So funk strumming is actually a very difficult way of playing the guitar. It's often sat back in funk bands and you don't really pay too much attention to it, and the first time you try and play some you realise what a great job they're doing. So let's look at some of the hallmarks of the style. First off, the strumming hand. Now you need to be very relaxed at your wrist, very loose, and also you need to be hitting it very hard. So there's a certain sound you get from funk guitar where it's got a real attitude to it, and basically a lot of that is the energy. Now if I was to, sometimes you might want that, but a lot of the time we get a lot of energy, and that comes from a very aggressive strumming hand. So what that means is the fretting hand has got a very difficult task. What you need to be able to do is mute with this hand everything that you don't want to hear, because whilst this hand's going wild, you can bet it's going to be hitting lots of notes you don't want to hear. So if we go back to that first chord, the reason I was barring with this first finger rather than use my fingertip was because I'm going to use it to bump into and make contact with the 2 top strings which we don't want to hear, like this. Now it looks like I'm barring it, but actually the only pressure I'm holding down is at the top here to catch this high 8th fret. Up here it's just loosely touching the string, very very loose, and as long as you bump into a string it can't ring out. So that's one way of muting. Another thing we can try is to use our thumb. Okay, so in which case you could use your fingertip with your first finger, and you can try and bring your thumb round, and again not let these strings ring out, so you're just gently touching it. Now be very careful either way you do it, first finger or thumb, not to actually hold them down, because then you're going to hear the note. So it's quite subtle. You need to get used to the feel of touching without the pressure of holding. Now what that means is we can now strum really aggressively and get that nice sound, but not worry about those horrible open notes. Okay, another element of funk strumming we need to talk about is the muting as a percussive rhythmic effect. So you could hear when I was strumming that chorus, you've got this driving rhythm going on, and what that is I'm filling the gaps that aren't strums of the chord with lots of muted notes. Now, the way I'm doing that is quite simple really in practice, in theory, but quite tricky in practice. What I'll be doing is loosening my grip on the chord. So hopefully you can see my grip loosen on my fingers. Now the strumming is the same. This is the driving part. The engine doesn't know what's going on. It's all to do with this hand and that squeezing for the note, loosen for the mute. Prime example of this, if a little bit cheesy, is George Michael's Faith. So I'm just squeezing when I want the chord, relaxing when I want the mute. So I'm going to write the strumming pattern down in the PDF. That I do, but actually if you listen it varies a lot. On the performance you hear at the end, I'm sometimes putting in fast little bits like that, sometimes no strums at all. Ultimately, as long as you've got the main strums of the chord, you can do what you want around it. So I'd definitely experiment. Try and get used to the basic techniques first and then start varying the rhythms. Right, onto the verse. Now this is one of the sections I was mentioning earlier where you don't really have a lot to do. Now if you were playing this live, you might not want to just be sat around twiddling your thumbs. So we're essentially going to take what their session guitarist does live and just play around a little bit more. So every so often you hear him making little noises, usually with effects on, just to fill the sound out a little bit, and he has the occasional rhythmic stab. So what I've done is I've set my delay pedal up to give me some nice repeats that are in time with the song. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the chords that move in the verse, there's only two, and play around with some nice floaty melody over the top. So the chords are B flat minor and A flat major. Now what I'm going to be doing essentially is thinking of all the minor notes, minor pentatonic there if that's the scale you know. If you do know a natural minor, you can flesh it out a little bit. And I'm just going to be picking a couple of them and letting them ring out, letting some of the notes ring out, finding little fragments to play, and just let the sound fill out a bit. And then again, on the major, I'm finding little chunks of notes to play together, one at a time. And then I'm also going to be making a few noises. So one of the things I'm doing is a pick scrape, which sounds quite cool with delay on, and some nice tremolo-y picking ideas where I just take a note, and just pick it, maybe slide off, and do whatever I can really to find nice atmospheric sounds that can just float around and fill the space. Now you don't want to overstep your mark. Obviously the singer is singing the interesting part for most people. You're just trying to back it up. Now the one thing I'm doing that you definitely do hear when you watch them play it live, watch their session guitarist, is a nice rhythmic stab. He plays it in the same place both verses, so that's definitely a worked out bit. And what it is the top part of a B flat minor bar chord, so I'm playing 8 on the D string and then 6 6 6 barring with my first finger, and I'm just going to hit it once and let the delay repeats take care of the rest. If you don't have a delay pedal, you can fake a delay quite effectively. It's easier to do if you're finger picking because you get a bit more control over the sound. So yeah, that's what I'm doing over the verse. Now if you wait until the end of the video, you'll see the performance and hopefully be able to spot some of those ideas. But in the PDF I'm going to write up some of the basic shapes and notes I'm thinking about over each chord, but feel free to experiment. Following on from the verse, we get into the pre-chorus section. Now this is quite similar both times around, and you should hopefully still have the same delay set up from the verse. So leave it on. What we're going to be doing is taking that stab that we did once in the verse and playing it 4 times basically. Now against the beat, this comes in on the off beat of beat 1. So if your beat's going 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, like this. 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. So after you've done that 4 times, you're going to move down and we're going to play the top part of our A flat major chord. So 3rd finger at fret 6 on the D, 2nd finger fret 5 on the G, and then a little bar over the 4th fret on the B string and E string. And you're only going to hit this twice. and then you get the chorus section which rises up. Now the guitar doesn't really do anything on this, but what you can do is follow the basic movement that they are following, which is an E flat major chord, a minor chord, F minor chord, G flat major chord, A flat major chord. So on the performance, the first time I do it, I'm doing this with smaller little chord shapes. So I'm just using the both middle strings at fret 8, both middle at fret 10, and then fret 11, and then fret 13, and that takes us back into the chorus. Later on in the performance you'll hear me do it with the full chords. The reason I do smaller ones first and the big ones later is because naturally in the song you want to build a nice dynamic curve. So the first time you hear it you get used to the sound, and the second time it's bigger and more powerful. Similarly, you'll notice on the chorus, on the very last chorus, as it fades out, I've gone over to a slightly more aggressive guitar tone because I'm trying to build that intensity. Okay, before we move on to the last section to deal with, which is the middle section, I'm just going to briefly talk about a little fill that I do that you will hear on the song every so often. Now, this is a little funk line that you hear. And it's even harder than the first funk thing that we did because this time we're only hitting one string, the G string. And now the notes are first finger at fret 8, and you can slide that to fret 10, and then little finger at fret 13. But I'm going to have to mute every other string. Now the way I'm doing this is I'm using my first finger and later my fourth finger, the same idea, to hold the note I want, but then also get very close to the other strings so they can't ring out. So you've got the note you want and then mutes. So if I hit from the G string down here, you can just hear the note, the single note. They can't ring out. And then what I'm also going to be doing is using my thumb to mute the top strings. So I'm going to go 8, slide up to 10, upstroke on the 10, down on the 13, and then I've got mute, mute, and play the 13 again. And then he kind of stays on that. Now, I've watched him play it live a few times and it does seem to vary each time, so as long as you've got that basic idea, you can play around with it a little bit. And that leads us from the verse to the pre-chorus. Right then, let's get to the middle section. Now this part is all piano on the record and sound effects and whatnot, but what I've done is fiddled with some basic bar chords that have got the right harmony, and then with just a bit of delay on, I'm just picking notes out from them as well, just to flesh the sound out a little bit more. So what we've got is G flat major as a bar chord. So this is a second fret, normal standard major bar shape. So first finger's bar in all 6 strings, finger 3 fret 4 on the A string, finger 4 fret 4 on the D string, finger 2 on the G string at fret 3. So one strum of that, and then I'm going to move up to a B flat minor, so it's the minor shape, the same shape we just had but without your second finger, at fret 6. Now you're not on this for long. You can strum it twice, move it back down. So this is that major shape again at A flat, which is the 4th fret. So I've gone, and then we're going to go right down to the 1st fret, which is an F minor this time, so no second finger, bar in the La, and you stay on this for quite a while. So at this point I might start picking out the notes individually, so the whole thing is gone. So I'm just fiddling around, no real rhyme or reason, just picking out some of the high notes whilst the chord keeps ringing out, just to make it sound a bit more interesting, like there's more going on than there is. You do this 4 times in the song, and then everything cuts out and you hear this chord. Now if you've got a distortion pedal, now's the time to use it. Just flick it on for this one chord. I'm going through a single channel amp, and obviously I need to sit here in front of you rather than run over to it and turn the distortion up, so you have to imagine there's more distortion than there is. Now what I'm doing, I've got my delay on still. I'm using my first finger to bar the middle 2 strings at fret 13, and then I've got my little finger on fret 16 on the B string. And after I've picked it, I'm keeping the pressure down and sliding down the neck. And that's it, that's all the sections. So I'm going to play the performance now. If you look in the PDF, I've got all of this written down, all of the tabs, all of the shapes, and the arrangement of the song. So, Best Friend.